This is the Triumph Bonneville T100, and the last Triumph we reviewed was the Triumph Speedmaster by the old man, and in that video he said we've reviewed all of the Bonnevilles, but he forgot to mention that we haven't done this one. So here's our thoughts on the T100.
As with all the Triumphs and Bonnevilles, this has very responsive, very sharp handling and very quick steering, and that's down to the rake of 25.5 degrees, the trail 104 millimeters, which is really short, and the wheelbase, which is pretty short as well, at 1450 millimeters, and that all gives you a responsive, easy to turn, very maneuverable, nimble motorcycle.
This 900cc Bonneville engine produces 64.1 brake horsepower at 7,400 RPM, which is right up in the red line, so I'm not sure if I'd want to be revving it out to that all the time, but it produces 80 Newton meters of torque at 3,750 RPM. So most of the time with this bike, you're kind of riding it between 3,000 and 5,000 RPM. And that's sort of peak torque figures, so most of the time you'll be riding it in the torque, and as you can see by the figures, it produces more torque than it does power, so you probably won't want to rev the absolute bee's nuts off of it all the time. Bee's squaring up on me. I'll give him some.
Now on this you've got a single disc front and rear, but the stopping power is very good indeed, so don't let that worry you that it hasn't got double discs at the front. Perfectly good stopping power.
The T100 starts at £9,100 in the UK, and it comes in three colours: red, which we've got here, blue and black. The red and blue, as you can see, from the red come in two-tone, and the black is just fully blacked out.
This has got the 900cc version of the Bonneville engine, but it's plenty powerful enough, and it's a lovely engine to explore the world and the countryside and the towns and wherever you want to go. But if you do open it up and let the revs build to the higher end of the scale, it's plenty quick enough, I can tell you.
If you're enjoying the video so far, make sure you like and subscribe. It helps the channel out massively, and we've got loads more stuff coming, lots of future content with awesome bikes, so you don't want to miss it. The seat height on this bike is 790 millimeters, and I am 6'1", and as you can see it looks perfectly fine on someone of my height. I'd say the ideal height range would be 5'5" to 6'2", but if you're either end of that spectrum or a little bit higher, a little bit lower, everything's going to be a compromise for you. It's hard to find a bike that fits you precisely, so this bike is pretty good all-rounder really. The side stand on this Triumph is very good. It's easy to put in, you know it's in. However, there isn't much of a lean angle with it, so if you are on a slight slope the wrong way, you can find that the bike's almost vertical and you're a little bit worried that it's going to tip over, and I suppose if the road was steep enough it could do, so watch out for that one.
The mirrors on this, for me, are not quite wide enough, so I can see about a third of the road behind me. If you weren't as wide or as tall as me, you'd be perfectly fine.
Now, what the bloody hell's wrong with that sheep? Now this bike has got right way around cartridge forks, and I think these look a lot better than upside down forks on this kind of bike. I think most people are obsessed with upside down forks these days, no matter what bike it's on, but for this bike this suits it perfectly, and I'm glad that they're in black, because a lot of forks nowadays are in this sort of gold colour, and I think it doesn't quite go with all bikes, and most bikes have it nowadays, so it's nice to see traditional black forks.
Now from my point of view at 6'2", the riding position's nice. There's always plenty of room for the arms on a Triumph, The legs are more bent on this one, but not too much so. So on the whole, I found it a nice, comfortable riding position.
This has a 5-speed gearbox, and the clutch on this bike is probably the lightest clutch of any of the bikes we've reviewed, which is really nice. You don't feel your hand getting any strain after a while of riding, so it's nice and effortless to use.
What I like about this Bonneville is the simplicity. You don't have modes on this one. You've got your twin clocks at the front there in analog, very nice. On and off switch there, key in the middle, hazards, indicators, horn, flasher, and a little button to scroll through your various things, and you can turn the traction control on and off, and that's about all it does. So it's a nice bike to just get on and ride, and that ticks the box that we like.
Miles per gallon figures on this bike is 68.9 miles per gallon, which is pretty remarkable, and this has a 14.5 litre fuel tank, so you're going to get a fair distance on one tank of petrol.
Always say hello to cows. Hello, cow. And here comes Darcy on the Harley.
This weighs 228 kilograms, and it does feel really, really light, especially with the rake and trail figures of this bike. It's so easy to manoeuvre about in tight spaces and flick about when you're on the country lanes, so it does not feel heavy at all.
Now, not only is the Triumph Bonneville T100 beautiful to look at, I love this tank and the paint scheme. It really is stunning. I like the flat bench seat, which you can get a passenger on, but you can move about on the seat, which is good. It's not too sharp, it's not too responsive, but it's just enough.
Now, you can get an A2 licence kit for this bike. So if you are 19 years old or below 24 and you've just done your A2 licence, this is certainly a contender. I think it's a beautiful bike and certainly a good one to start on. And from experience of restricting a Harley, you won't really notice that sort of 10-15 horsepower that you're restricting it by. The torque stays the same, so this is quite a torquey engine. So you're not really going to notice much of a difference. So I don't think that I'm going to A2 restrict it and then it's going to be really slow. You'll still keep up with everyone else, trust me. There's some really weird sheep around here. I don't know what they're doing in those bushes, but they're making some funny noises, I'll tell you that. Now that we've reviewed all of the Triumph Bonneville family, it's safe to say that there is a Triumph Bonneville for everyone. From the more mellow bikes like the Speedmaster, and I class this as one of the more mellow ones, to the sporty ones like the Thruxton RS and the Scramblers. There's something for everyone. And this bike, I'd say, would be really good for someone who's starting out, maybe got their A2 licence, you can restrict it, or if you've just passed your full test. And to be honest, anyone in between will enjoy the bike just as much. It's not one of the more powerful Triumphs, but if you do open it up, it's still got plenty of power. And I'd say it'd be good for someone who's maybe coming from a little bit of a bigger bike and wants to sort of chill out a bit and not go as crazy. It'd be perfect for you as well.
We forgot to mention the sheep around here. We forgot to mention that the pea shooter exhaust, which is very attractive, it has a very cleverly hidden cat under there, and you wouldn't know it was there. So it looks very classic. So that's a great design by Triumph to incorporate that.
Make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't done already, and leave your comments below what you think of the Bonneville T100. We think it's awesome. If you've got one, let us know your thoughts of it and how you've got on with it, and we'll see you in the next video.